In this video, I'll explain how JoyBoy created the Hitohitonomi model Nika, the legendary devil fruit of the sun god that he has always admired. To explain and fully understand this theory, I'll first start off by talking about JoyBoy. JoyBoy is essential for this story. Even though Luffy represents Nika's avatar, he is not the representation of JoyBoy, the one that's been awaited by numerous people. So who is JoyBoy? What is his link with Nika? And are they the same entity or two completely different things? It's reasonable to have all these questions because all of this, even in One Piece, is not very clear, and it can be frustrating trying to understand everything. But to try and get a good idea of who JoyBoy actually is, let's look back at everything we know about him. JoyBoy was cited for the first time in chapter 628 by Nico Robin, but it is not until chapter 649 that we learn additional information about him. He was a man that lived during the Void Century 800 years ago. We are aware that he possesses the ability to either decipher the poneglyphs or engrave them, as evidenced by the fact that he left an apology letter on one of these ancient stones. This letter was specifically intended for the sea princess of his era. She was the former ancient weapon Poseidon, and the apology letter was for his broken promise that he had made with Fishman Island. This promise seems to have a link with Noah, the enormous ship that was created during the Void Century, because of the famous legend passed down from generation to generation by the royal family. It mentions the day that a man would come and fulfill JoyBoy's promise. On that day, Noah would be able to accomplish his purpose, which is currently still unknown. After this, we had to wait until Wano, more than 300 chapters later, to learn more about JoyBoy. Roger and his crew members discover Laugh Tale, and they learn what happened during the Void Century. JoyBoy is confirmed by Roger as being an important figure during this forgotten era, and could also possibly be the one that left the ultimate treasure, the One Piece. Then in chapter 968, Oden confirms to us that Wano's borders have to be open before JoyBoy's return, which validates the fact that JoyBoy is an inherited title. And finally, in chapter 972, Oden states that this person that the entire world awaits would reappear 800 years later after his disappearance. As for Toki, we know from chapter 973 that she traveled 800 years into the future and arrived during Oden's era. She was in search of the day the world would be turned upside down. And this day is associated by a figure that is going to defy the world and completely change it. Whitebeard was the one that talked about this for the first time in chapter 576, which is also the chapter that marks his death. In the future, someday, a man will appear, bearing the weight of centuries of history on his shoulders to challenge the world, afraid of the coming war that will engulf the world. When someone finds that treasure, the world will be shaken to its core. The One Piece is real. Looking back on this with hindsight, we now understand that Whitebeard was talking about JoyBoy at this exact moment, a story most likely told to him by Roger during their last meeting. We then jump back to Wano in chapter 1014. After having defeated Luffy, Kaido realizes that Luffy wasn't able to become JoyBoy, confirming yet again that this name is a title that is to be inherited. In chapter 1036, Kaido is surprised by what King believes, because he sees JoyBoy in him, and that the world Kaido is making meets his expectations. This scene indicates that the legend of JoyBoy isn't associated to just the fishmen, but also the Lunarians, and that this clan also awaits the appearance of the man that is going to change the world. And finally, during the final battle in chapter 1040, Zunisha is announced as JoyBoy's companion. He is even able to sense the return of his old friend when Luffy awakens his devil fruit and becomes Nika, pushing him to put all his hope on him. Now that we've established all of JoyBoy's mentions in One Piece and have a good understanding of his story, we'll be able to determine who came first between Nika and JoyBoy, and to also determine if they are the same entity or two completely different things. So this is a theory about it. JoyBoy was not Nika, just like Luffy is also not him. They both possess the devil fruit of the sun god, but without actually being Nika. The truth is that Nika is an ancient god that dates back thousands of years ago, who throughout the ages imposed himself as a fictional hero. It is what the data book Road to Laughtale leads us to believe by saying this about one of the most iconic panels of Skypiea, a folk song with the same rhythm as Nika. Could this be related to the staunch believers of the sun god in the distant past? Exactly. In a distant past, Nika was already a known legend. His story recounts his battle against evil, which he liberated. It was only a popular folk tale that the young JoyBoy took to heart by reading his tale, and he fell in love with Nika's determination, his will, and his story. And just like Vegapunk explained to us back in chapter 1069, that we owe all there is to desire. He explains that each devil fruit embodies a different wish someone had for our evolution, meaning that people who manifested their desires and will were rewarded with the powers of a devil fruit. So JoyBoy, who desired to become just like Nika, the fictional liberator who guided his whole life, he was able to manifest his powers into reality, thus creating the mythical zone devil fruit, the Hitohitonomi model Nika. His dream came true and he was able to embody the sun god, defender of the oppressed. This theory originates from chapter 1062. It is in this chapter that Oda puts in place for the second time the existence of comic books and fictional stories using Jori Boni. The first time was with Kaido in chapter 1045 when he compared Luffy's appearance to something out of a picture book. So finally, what if Nika, even before being possessed by JoyBoy 800 years ago, was a fictional character portrayed in a comic book in the One Piece universe? The sun god Nika was at a point in time just a fictional superhero created by the ancient civilization, exactly like Luffy is just a fictional character in the eyes of the readers of One Piece. This would be such an ironic twist, and it would also explain Oda's choice to bestow Luffy a similar style that comes from comic books and cartoons. In One Piece, literature and fiction have always occupied an essential place since the beginning of the story. Brag Men, a fictional romance that Nami had, written by the explorer Lewis Arnott, contains many stories from the Grand Line. One of these stories talks about Little Garden, an island that is inhabited by two giants who are constantly fighting. There's also the famous tale of Noland, a picture book which tells us the story of a man who died branded as a liar, but we know that this story is real and that this man really existed. There is also the story of Sora, the Justice Hero, a comic book that is known throughout the world and puts in place the hero of the Marines against the demons of Germa 66. This story has such a strong fictional presence that the people thought that the Germa 66 was purely imaginary. No one actually thought they were real. Nami's reaction proves that this was the case. This also proves that something that is in fact real can be considered as a myth and as not real in the One Piece world due to a comic book. And to conclude, there is Raftel. In chapter 967, we saw Roger's reaction to the story left behind by JoyBoy, a tale that was so funny that they couldn't stop themselves from laughing, and they decided to call the island Laugh Tale. The common point between all these fictional stories is that they are real. Noland did find the Golden City. The Germa 66 actually exists. Little Garden is inhabited by two giants clashing with each other. But most importantly is that they're all linked to the adventures of our main protagonists. They are unraveled by them. It is for this reason that Nika is simply just a legend that also comes from a fictional work. After awakening his final form, Luffy started acting like a cartoon character, because in One Piece when he's in Gear 5, they see him as a character that comes straight out of a picture book. Nika makes people laugh because he comes from a funny story. So not only is he the sun god, but also the hero of a book that existed a long time ago. This book is what Roger discovered on Laugh Tale. It was left behind by JoyBoy, the former person who had Nika's abilities. Nika existed way before JoyBoy, and JoyBoy inherited his powers years later. In reality, this comic book literally represents One Piece, the manga. We're following the story of a hero who goes around liberating people and bestowing joy wherever he goes. One Piece is the famous fictional story Nika, the Sun God.